Hi, it's Eliana, and today I am going to be looking at fact or fiction in hypnosis memories and linking it to reality today. So for myself personally, I like to quantify and verify truth as much as possible. Like for example, from my self-hypnosis sessions, I investigated the following categories. Biological drug serums. So I like to compare what I find in my own memories through the self-hypnosis regression and what actually exists out there here on Earth that's an equivalent of it, or at least discusses the information, or there's plans for it in the future. So those are the things I look for in the here and now to quantify actionable data that comes from my hypnosis self-regression memories. So the first topic is the biological drug serums. The biological drug serums on Mars are used to regenerate the autoimmune system and other parts of the body, as well as provide oxygenation to the body in order to withstand the harsher climate of the Martian atmosphere in higher altitudes. Okay, interesting information that came from my self-hypnosis regression session. Fact or fiction? So I went and did the experiment on Earth. Yes, biological drug serums in the form of immunoglobulin therapy, the equivalent intravenous immunoglobulin IVIG and subcutaneous immunoglobulin SCIG are used to regenerate the autoimmune system on Earth. I tried it out on myself and it worked, reducing inflammation rates in my body, removing the white matter lesions in the brain, improving autoimmune system functions, and allowing me to be able to breathe easier and not react to allergens in the environment. So for me, it checks out as fact. I was able to replicate some of the same factors of using the immunoglobulin therapy, which is classed as biological drug serums on Earth, to have some of the same results as I had on Mars with their biological drug serums. So it works. So for me, that's enough. That is enough to put it as fact, not fiction. Gyroscope propulsion drives. From my memories of seeing a gyroscope UFO in Ukraine when I was young, and also seeing planetary corporations using gyroscope drives to build out craft, fact or fiction? I would say likely fact, since gyroscope propulsion systems can be built on Earth and there's a patent on it. It's a US patent. Also, I have worked with someone who has memories of seeing how a gyroscope propulsion drive is powering the spaceships for the SSP. Here is their information. Theories on how the gyroscope propulsion system works from the perspective of the person whose hypnosis memories revealed that the SSP uses gyroscopic propulsion technologies. And this person emailed me yesterday and they gave me this description, and they're allowing me to put this into the document. We both discussed it, and to put it in perspective that's easy to understand, because this person is really, they think from an engineer's point of view and perspective. So this is an easy to understand description of what we both came up with that makes sense. So I finally got around to watching your gyroscope propulsion video. It triggered a bunch of stuff. I now remember how those types of propulsion systems work. The gyroscope propulsion drive is much safer than the ion vortex engine because it doesn't produce harmful radiation. If I'm remembering correctly, there are a few differences in the design that I'm remembering and the gyroscopic image that you used in the video. Only that having gyroscopic bodies spinning on all three axes are not how they're designed. Only one axis is required. and it requires two oppositely spinning bodies on the same axis to create an effective hyperspace traversing field. The gyroscope vortex engine produces the same exact effect that the ion vortex engine does, just in a solid-state mechanical system rather than using a potentially harmful ionizing gas. It requires super-conducive materials to play in place of the gyroscopic spinning body. So the person is saying that it requires super-conducive materials in place of the gyroscopic spinning body. So there's stuff it's needed for conductivity to happen. There needs to be a temperature superconductor to make it function. The superconductive material needs to be pulsed with DC current. Shorter the current make and break times, the greater the results. There was another person asking this question. I know the Germans back in the war referred to some craft as flying gyroscopes. Back to my friend. That's because the old design was two oppositely spinning drums filled with an ionizing gas. The new solid-state design has two oppositely spinning solid superconductors to achieve the same results. So this was the person's information about the gyroscopic propulsion drives and how it can be used actually in designing things for gyroscopic propulsion technologies. That's their information. That some of it came out of the hypnosis that we did for them, and a lot of it was also triggered after watching my basic gyroscope propulsion video. So it opened up more information for them. Yes, my video is basic and simplistic, but it did include functionality aspects of how the gyroscopic propulsion drive itself, how it makes the craft maneuver in left to right in quick maneuvers that air jets and fighter jets can't do in airspace currently. Because I was discussing the Planetary Corporation's Tic Tac and gimbal UFOs. The Planetary Corporations makes those. So in essence, I believe they use the gyroscope propulsion drives to do that, to make those maneuvers, because there's a warp bubble field around the craft itself. And these gyroscope propulsion drives can create these warp bubbles in hyperspace, and to traverse the hyperspace fields and to do these quick maneuvers that conventional craft can't on Earth. So that tells me it's advanced technologies, and the SSPs are involved in this. And these craft have been seen in our airspace quite a bit. And they're seamless. They don't have the nuts and bolts stitches that our craft are made out of. So it's definitely not coming out of Earth manufacturing. It's coming from Planetary Corporation's Mars bases and aerospace facilities that they have near the bases. And evidence? I always look for evidence. So these gyroscope propulsion drives were both in my memories and in the other person's memories. So I'm like, okay, is there something on Earth about it? And I did find the US6705174 Gyroscopic Propulsion / Apparatus and Method for Gyroscopic Propulsion patent. So it's listed on Google, and this is the source. If you go patentsgoogle.com, patent US6705174B2, if you click on the link, it'll go straight to the patent itself, where you can read about gyroscopic propulsion systems. And it's a big document. You can even download the PDF for it and read about it. And also there's a video for it, Apparatus for Gyroscopic Propulsion Explained. The person who invented it did a video about it as well. So you can both look at the patent itself, the information, and download the PDF. You can also look at the 7-minute video because it's publicly on the internet. So anybody could look at this. I just go and look for the evidence. Okay, why did this gyroscopic propulsion drive systems come up in my hypnosis memories? Well, because I saw a gyroscopic powered UFO in Russia when I was small. So that came up in my hypnosis session, and it came up in the other person's hypnosis session as well, because they were asking about different ships' propulsion systems. They had memories of, making propulsion systems in the SSP, but they were very vague, so they wanted just to find out what kind of propulsion systems they had built. So, and the gyroscopic drives were just one of the propulsion systems on a big list. They built out other propulsion systems as well, but the gyroscopic propulsion drive is the most important one because there's actually a US patent on it, and it's in theory it's possible to make this happen and to fly a spacecraft with it in theory. So that's why it's included in here, because theoretically it's possible, so it's likely as fact. It's good enough for me as evidence. Then I discussed the Neuralink implants and nanotechnology. As well, likely fact for Neuralink implants that use nanites in order to build the implants so that synthetic telepathy is possible to communicate telepathically for whoever has the implants. Also language translation. These implants can create language translation, downloads and uploads of information, connecting to databases, and remotely piloting ships or interacting with various technologies, especially holographic technologies on Mars. That's what I used to do with the Neuralink implants when I worked in the cybernetics labs attached to the Planetary Corporation's bases. The nanotech literature on Earth is already investigating making Neuralink implants, and a company is gearing up to make Neuralink implants to put into people's brains. There is also the Cyborg Soldiers 2050 report for the DoD that discusses having augmented soldiers with implants to make them stronger, enhance vision, hearing, brain processing, and telepathic communication, and different types of futuristic warfare strategies. So that's what the Cyborg Soldiers 2050 report includes for the DoD. And again, there's a whole report on this that can be downloaded, and you can read it for yourself. So, evidence for it. I've read several books, and one of them is Understanding Nanomedicine by Rob Burgess. Very good book that explains nanotechnology and nanomedicine, how this will be incorporated on Earth. And it's a fledgling field, but it's being studied and on some levels already being done on delivering nanomedicine into the human body. It's in its infancy stages, but the book is very good. It helps you to understand what nanotechnology and nanomedicine is and how these Neuralink implants will work with the human body and the brain, how it will link with your neurons, your muscles. When you get 3D printed hands, how these Neuralink implants will help, the hands function. or if it's a prosthetic hand that's mechanical, you still need an implant to connect it to talk with your brain. So to get the mechanical appendage to send signals to the brain back and forth, so you need an implant for that. And also the book talks about growing artificial skin over the appendages, either it's 3D printed or it's mechanical. So this book is really interesting. The other book that I read was Therapeutic, Nanomaterials by Mustafa, Guler, and Ayse Tekinay. So it really describes the different types of nanomaterials and how they're used for therapeutic purposes to fix the body. So that book taught me a lot, because the terms that come up in my hypnosis sessions, what I get is keyword terms: Neuralink implants, biological drug serums, holographic medical pods, Meditech units, regeneration tanks. I get a lot of keyword terms and a bit of an explanation of what they are, what all of this stuff means. It's basically regenerative medicine is what it is, all of it. But, well, how does it work on Earth, or how will it work on Earth? So this makes me go and dig, really dip into it on the internet and in libraries online. Like, okay, is there information about Neuralink implants, Neuralink implants, nanotechnology, nanomedicine? And yes, there is. There are equivalents to what I can compare my hypnosis session info to. And likely fact, I find there's enough evidence for me that this is likely factual, that it's going on. It's been done on Mars, and eventually it's going to be done on Earth. So, and the big one is the DoD document, Cyborg Soldier 2050, Human-Machine Fusion and the Implications for the Future of the DoD. I highly recommend that folks read this article, because it's huge. This document is huge. It's literally the manifesto plans for 2050 of human-machine fusion and implications for it. 2030s, 2050s. Highly recommend this to be read. It really discusses Neuralink implants, and augmentation of soldiers for the future of making super soldiers, literally, to be the best to be the best that they can be out in the field. And there's also, I was talking about the SSP and Planetary Corporation's basis on the Moon and Mars. That came up in my hypnosis sessions as well, several of them. So that's an important one. There were memories in my hypnosis sessions where I had remembered being stationed on one of the lunar space operations bases on the Moon. This base had several circular modules connected to it by corridors. There were research labs, living quarters, huge lunch area, biodome facilities, parks, etc. So this is a huge facilities. These can be huge facilities, huge bases with many levels on them. And this one was 32 levels or more that this facility has on the Moon. As well, the hypnosis regression memories revealed that there are bases that were built out by planetary corporations on Mars with cybernetics labs and military facilities. These bases are protected by domes that emit electromagnetic fields, so they are shielded from space junk and other planetary bodies, like asteroids, meteorites. Since there's an electromagnetic force field around the domes, it repels any space junk and anything other planetary bodies that could damage the base, so it's repelled. It is likely fact that the US Navy and Army had a hand in building the first underground bases and research labs on the moon by the 1950s, because Project Horizon is a detailed manifesto for how to do it, and also the Army report on strategic places on the moon to build rocket bays and where to mine. Then they moved on to build bases on Mars in the 1960s and got better at it by the 1980s. And that information that they were building out bases on Mars by the 1980s, that stuff I saw in the historical records of the Planetary Corporation's databases on Mars in their bases. So I had access to the holographic database files, and I did look this stuff up, and I'm like, oh wow, they'd already built bases on Mars by 1980s. And the US Navy and Army were involved in that. Project Horizon had a detailed description of how the V5 rockets would be used to transport all the building materials needed to build out the underground base on the moon, and then bring in all the crews and personnel to man the base. This was supposed to be done in planned stages. And I've read the document. So both of them, there's 2 volumes. So, you know, this is information that I found Project Horizon after I'd already done my presentations about the moon bases and Mars bases. So this to me is just corroborating evidence that it's likely fact that the US Navy and Army were involved in a secret US space program of having a whole infrastructure built out first on the moon, then Mars. And it's much more advanced now than it was in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1980s. It's much more advanced. So, you know, I've read the Project Horizon Volume 1 and 2 from top to bottom, and there's hundreds of pages in it. There's a lot of information to disseminate and look at. And to me, it's the very top tier of evidence that they did it, that the US Navy and Army built out these bases on the moon and then Mars. It's a historical record. So, you know, have a look. Project Horizon Volume 1, Summary and Support Considerations, and there's the PDF for it that you can download and look at and read. There's Project Horizon Volume 2, Technical Considerations and Plans. Again, you can download this and read about it. And there's also the Military Lunar Base Program, or SR Lunar Observatory Study Volume 1, Study Summary and Program Plan. Also very detailed information, highly recommendable reading. I learned a lot from it, and they were also planning to send nuclear missiles with the V5 rockets to the moon. Why would the US Navy and Army need nuclear missiles on the moon? That's a question we have to ask. Again, why does the US Navy and Army need nuclear missiles on the moon? Yes, obviously it's strategic defense because they're planning to build their own base and bases on the moon. So it's a very strategic operation to colonize the moon as quickly as possible before the Russians get there or the Chinese. So I fully believe that it's fact that the US Navy and Army have had a hand in building bases both on the moon and Mars, and that infrastructure was amalgamated into planetary corporations, because planetary corporations has many affiliate companies that are from aerospace, contractors, bankers, medicine, education. They have many affiliates from Earth companies that are involved with planetary corporations on Mars. Half of these corporations have no idea what they're even contributing to planetary corporations. They just provide the materials, the information, the funding for these black ops operations. That's how planetary corporations, clandestine operations are paid for, out of black budgets. So it's all connecting the dots. And here's my disclaimer. I don't like spinning wild tales of delusion. I do go and fact check even my own hypnosis memories for what actually already exists on Earth or will be utilized in the near future. It is my form of verification process. It's my own form of how I verify things. So that is my disclaimer. I like to get actionable data and check it against what's in the here and now. Even I go looking for evidence for my hypnosis session memories. Well, how can I link this to documentation that exists on Earth? What type of evidence can I provide that's outside of my own subconscious state? I'm a researcher. I'm not just some SSP experiencer with memories. I'm also a trained researcher. So that's what my diploma is in. So for me, it's not enough to just have hypnosis memories. How does that link up to anything on Earth, to what's happening on Earth, to historical stuff, in documentation that's on Earth about any of these SSP plans? Well, I've just given you a lot of stuff to really consider and look up and link based on my hypnosis memories and the information provided on all this documentation. So go have a look and make up your own minds whether this is fact, likely fact, or fiction. Everybody has their own discernment, and I highly recommend that you really do your due diligence and look at all the information provided in all this documentation and compare it against my own testimony. Thank you so much, and namaste.